Happy Monday, everybody. It's Columbus Day here in North America and apparently across the world, if you believe what I kind of think. It's your boy Decal here, and I'm hosting the E.I.T.H.R podcast, episode number 48. How's everyone doing? How was your weekend? Hope everybody had a very relaxing and eventful past couple of days, and hope today is kind of relaxing for you guys as well. We're coming from you live from the GNS studios here in Northern California. The E.I.T.H.R podcast stands for the elephant in the room, where we like to discuss certain topics that may be difficult for you to have among your peers. Just sometimes when you have different opinions, the conversation can get a little dicey. It can get a little angst, maybe a little amped up, hyper. The volume might get cranked up a little bit, and so sometimes messages don't get heard properly because everyone is worried about them being right. Here we try to discuss everything from a neutral ground, a neutral standpoint, where both sides can get seen, heard, and viewed as much as possible from a non-biased perspective. So that's what we like to do here at the E.I.T.H.R podcast here in Northern California. Two things we do here before we start off any episode is we like to give a shout out to people. So the first thing I want to do is give a shout out to everybody who is going through mental health, mental challenges, anything that's going through an emotional roller coaster. Because sometimes those can be extremely difficult to deal with, and we're going to address that in one of our topics today. Actually, I'm here at the E.I.T.H.R podcast. So, if you're going through something, man, keep your head up. It's a lot easier said than done. Lord knows, I'm one person to relate with that. But you have to be able to know and believe that whatever it is that you're going through, it is going to get easier down the road. And for myself, it was easy to locate, try to find, discover, understand the lesson, right? Because in school, you're given a lesson and then you're given a test. In life, you're given a test and you're supposed to figure out the lesson. So if you can possibly figure out that lesson, usually it eases the toll of whatever lesson that it is that you're going through, or whatever struggle it is that you're going through. So I just want to go ahead and make sure that I pass that message on. Besides giving shout outs to people, we like to do an inspiration, motivational type of thing here at the E.I.T.H.R podcast as well. So one thing I want to do is share. It is a tweet from Coach Prime, Deion Sanders. If anybody knows, he was the high-stepping cornerback for the Dallas Cowboys, San Francisco 49ers, Atlanta Falcons in the NFL. He was also played for the Atlanta Braves when he had a baseball career. One of the very few people to hit a home run in a playoff game, then turn around and play in a playoff game and end up from the MLB to the NFL. So, standout from Florida State. He now coaches HBCU Jackson State. He's the head coach. And he has this tweet. And it says, "What are you waiting on? Nobody's going to tap on your shoulder and say it's time. Get up, get started, get moving, thinking, creating, and get everything that's inside out of you. It's time to separate yourself and focus on you and make the life you want happen now." I like that. Because what sometimes you have to understand is you're not going to have somebody around anymore. And this is mainly for people who are in high school, getting ready to go into college, or who are just starting college, or someone who has a goal and they're trying to start a new goal in life, a new leaf, a new chapter, a new page. Listen, nobody is going to be there to tap you on the shoulder to remind you, hey, it's time to go. Get up. It's time to get started. No, come on, you can do it. You have to dig deep within yourself, ladies and gentlemen, and figure that out. Is it easy? No. Is it simple? Yes. So that means you have to do certain things the days before to prepare to get aligned, so that way when the day comes, it's an easier adjustment as time goes on. So we're going to get into a little bit more of this. We're also going to get into a weed smoking gym in Colorado when we get back.
Most t-shirts are simply cool to look at or look in. Well, so are ours. But ours also aim to send a message. They aim to put a name on obstacles that once stood in your way and aren't there anymore. Struggles that you turned into successes and crushed. You made it look easy. Shop at mile.today. Mile.today. www.mile.today. A GNS collection.
As I said earlier, there is a gym, a fitness gym, where it is now open in the state of Colorado, where you can go and have a little recreational greenery in your system, in the atmosphere, while you're doing your workout. I know that sounds very different than what you're probably accustomed to. Most gyms don't have any smoking whatsoever. This particular gym encourages you to smoke before, during, or even after. The founder, Janessa Leah, was diagnosed with a rare condition where she tried doing, the traditional narcotic drugs, the traditional prescription drugs, and they didn't work for her. She had joint problems, and she brings up a very good point I think a lot of people don't want to acknowledge, is when you take narcotic drugs or prescription drugs, and everyone's going to be a little bit different, of course, but your body grows a tolerance to these drugs. And what happens is when you grow a tolerance, anybody knows, you have to do more of them in order for them to be able to work. And as your tolerance grows, the consumption of the drugs also grow. And as the consumption grows, again, the tolerance grows. So it's a very, very vicious cycle when it comes to some of these things. She also makes the statement that when she was doing these, it did not necessarily help with the pain, because there will also be some times where she was so much in pain, she would forget to take the medication. And so her thing was, this was something that was very simple for her. It was also something that allowed her to have a certain type of feeling that allowed her to not only feel well, but it was also a feeling that allowed her to function. It allowed her to be active. And it gave her the feeling that, hey, I can do this. There was also a video that I seen a while ago of a gentleman who had Parkinson's disease. And with this gentlemen, medication didn't work, and there was no way for them to, to cure, to help to heal. So they said. In this video, you see him, having his normal condition. He's laying on the couch and someone hands him a joint. I'm assuming it's a joint, or maybe it was a blunt. And as the video watches him, he's still shaking, and he passes it back to them. And I want to say maybe not even 10 minutes. His condition starts to gradually decline. And it would just, as if it was starting to calm itself. And as this video is going on, you see him and his condition do a complete 180. And his legs are stretched out on the couch. He's leaning back, and his arms go from that's in front of him, shaking because of the condition, to where he puts his arms behind his head like he's relaxing, having a conversation with somebody. And it was so, the transition of that was just so damn smooth. You almost forgot he had a medical condition. And so it makes me think, feel, and believe there's reasons why big pharmaceutical companies have for decades banned the medical use of marijuana. And I think, feel, and believe it is because it is a natural pharmaceutical that the earth provides. And if you believe in this, it's a drug that God has provided for us naturally to help with ailments that we have. And I think that is a wonderful thing, but it makes me question, rhetorically, why they would ban such a drug. And the reason is really simple. The reason is money. The indigenous people, the Native Americans, for centuries have used marijuana as a way to get in touch with the spiritual world, as a way to decompress stressful events and situations, even a way to connect with one another. The biggest problem I've ever heard of someone smoking is they get slow and seemingly, quote unquote, stupid, goofy, stuck. You might get the munchies. You might just zone out. You might get an addiction because of the mood it puts you in, because of the mindset it puts you in. And it makes a person very moody if they don't have their weed, especially if they're a big time smoker. But that's no different than somebody who has an addiction to alcoholism. There's no different to a person who has an addiction to dopamine. And what I mean by that is no different than somebody who has an addiction to their cell phone and social media, addiction to the camera and posting selfies and pictures and getting attention. These addictions are looked upon as natural addictions, and hell, you can go to the store and buy these addictions. But the addiction to marijuana at one point was so deemed as taboo. It was illegal. Matter of fact, it's still illegal federally. But more and more people are proving marijuana is actually helping out a boatload of medical conditions such as anxiety, stress, certain joint and muscle pain, such as the woman in Colorado, it was, what was the thing that she had? What I believe her collagen. It was aiding in pain and discomfort with situations like that. There's some types of marijuana that helps you focus and brings out creativity that's within the brain. It helps with certain people with, like I said, with depression, and minimizes that type of thing. Very interesting that you can smoke weed and go to the gym. And in the video that I saw about this person, I didn't see anyone necessarily doing any weightlifting, but it was more fitness for like yoga and stretching and flexibility. So it aided with different things of you being able to have certain functions so you can have an overall sensation of feeling of accomplishment, right? Nothing about bulking up, but more about like, okay, this feels kind of good. Everybody knows the older you get, there's a higher chance you're going to feel pain. The human body is like a vehicle. It's like an engine. The more miles you put on it, the more it's going to break down. How many mornings have you had to where it hurts just to sit up in bed, right? It hurts to stand up. It takes you a minute to get those first steps going, to get the body warmed up to the movement of you actually doing something. So if you've been feeling pain this whole time, and now you have something that makes you feel less discomfort, it's going to encourage you to do more. Hell, why would someone frown upon that? Especially if it's natural. I say kudos to them. I know some people have their own personal things about marijuana and against it. I used to smoke when I was younger. I make the choice not to smoke, not because I'm scared of anything. For me, I just don't need to anymore. But I'm not necessarily against it. But I'm not going to force someone who isn't for it.
This is Max from Sacramento, and you are listening to Decal with the E.I.T.H.R podcast.
Again, if it's not your thing, it's not your thing. But I think that's kind of cool how you do have some place you can go to for that. I think that's kind of dope. No pun intended, but yeah, double entendre. What I want to do now is talk a little bit about the Deion Sanders thing. Like I said before, where I read it in the motivational thing, and a lot of people, listen, we're not tired. We're not exhausted. We're not motivated. And I think what happens is when you're young, mainly before the ages of 24, 25, 26, before that. So when you're like 24, 23, 22 or younger, the world is looked at completely different because you're younger. You're not as experienced with certain things. You feel you can change the world. There's certain things that you say, I can do that. You give it a shot, right? You're bulletproof. You have one of this armor that it can't be cracked. It cannot be pierced through. It's not broken. It's invincible, right? And the good thing about that is nothing's going to stop you. Nothing's going to get in your way. Nothing's going to sway you. The bad side to that is you refuse to hear anything people are trying to tell you and giving you a heads up and giving you a warning and giving you some type some type of guidance because you think, oh, because you failed, you don't know how to do it. So why would I listen to someone who failed at it, right? The bad side about that is you don't really understand the message that's trying to be explained to you. So when you're on that side of the 20s, you have this energy to go, but you also have this arrogance to not heed any other warning signs, right? You see it on the freeway all the time. It's usually the young people who are traveling 75, 80 miles plus, zipping through traffic, racing because, hell, they saw it in the Transporter, they saw it on Fast and Furious, they saw it on, on Mission Impossible. This accident ain't gonna happen to me. I'm not gonna wreck. I'm good, right? It's one of those. But when you're on this side of 25, 26, 27, you've seen a few accidents. You might have been in a couple of accidents. You might have been in a couple of close calls. So your brain starts to develop the consciousness of saying, yo, whoa, 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 whoa. Calm all that down. So you have this understanding of, damn, I've seen some things, I understand some things, I now know some things, let me stop doing some things. So when you're in your mid to late 30s, early 40s, and older, you've seen enough in life to where you're constantly reminded what doesn't work. You're constantly reminded of how much time you've wasted on fill in the blank. You dwell on why something isn't where you thought it should be at a certain time. And that affects your inspiration. That affects your drive. Because it's a negative weight that's holding you back, that's saying all the choices and decisions we have made throughout life have brought us to here. We don't have time to commit to something over there. What you have to remind yourself again is, if I was in my 20s, I wouldn't necessarily care about the consequences of what's holding me back, because nothing is going to hold me back. But when you're in your 30s or 40s, it's easy to get held back in some cases. And you have to remind yourself, no one is going to tap you on the shoulder and say, let's go. You got to tap yourself on the shoulder and tell yourself, let's go. Right? And a lot of us tend to get caught up in our daily things. So here's what I realized that helped me out with this, which was, there's certain songs that put me in a certain mood to accomplish certain goals. There are certain movies that do the same thing. There are certain like outfits or clothing that I would wear that makes me. I think if you are anything like myself, what you know, if you create a certain environment around you, it gives you that type of get up and go. Ladies and gentlemen, create that surrounding you. Constantly put yourself in that environment of, I need to use everything to do. Sometimes when you are in your later stages, you understand the consequences of certain actions. And so we get into this space of ours where we say, oh, I can do that later. I can do that when I want to. Or, I'll get to it when I get to it. Because you know what it's like. It's like me with the gym. I know for a fact that within a couple of months, my body was so readjusted back to what it used to be that I tell myself, I'll get started at this time. Because I know how the routine works. The issue with that is that if you do that on a regular basis, that's how this pushed out further because of what's going on. Which attention is more important? The attention of others or the attention of what you choose to focus on? And that's very, very dicey because one can easily be led to the other, right? But you have to determine what is more important. There's two types of pain, ladies and gentlemen. Two types of pain. And I've said this, I don't know how many years ago, and I'm going to say it for I don't know how many years in the future. Pain of success or the pain of regret. You have to decide which pain is worth the trouble. That's on you. Make that decision. And only you can make that decision. And only you can stick to it. Right? It's completely 100% up to you guys. Last thing I want to talk about, money conversations. Does anyone have conversations with their family regarding money, regarding finances? Many of us don't. It seems if you grew up in a quote unquote poor family or a broke household, money was always taboo. Money was always something we never wanted to discuss because no one understood it, so we never wanted to speak it. Well, here's a lesson that I've learned, and it didn't make any sense to me until I got in my late 20s, and it was teach whatever it is you want to learn. Teach whatever it is you want to learn. And as backwards and contradicting as that may sound, if you're teaching something, you're going to do your research to know what it is you're talking about. And I'm not necessarily talking about Google research. I'm talking about real research, right? Third-party, non-biased, documented research. I'm not talking about a blog of somebody who agrees and thinks like you. I'm talking about somebody who teaches you something. Because there's a difference between being taught something versus learning from someone who thinks like you. That doesn't necessarily mean they're right. That just means that you guys agree. So if you've never had conversations about money because it intimidates you, that's good. Challenge yourself, right? Because it's not about what you collect, it's not about what you have, but it's about what you leave behind. That's what's called a legacy, right? So now keep in mind, you can only teach those who are willing to learn. If they're not willing to learn, don't waste your time teaching because they're listening to you, but they're not hearing the message. And all that's going to do is possibly breed frustrations for you. So on certain things that you never knew, that's the best time to learn how to teach someone because you're also learning at the same time. And as you see them light up with, oh, I never knew that, you get swollen with pride because like, yeah, I never knew that too. But that makes sense. Now the next thing is you have to follow those things. You have to step on that path and follow what's being said and lead by example. Otherwise, you would definitely come off as a hypocrite. And the last thing you want to do is the last thing I think anybody wants to do is come off as a hypocrite. That's not cute. So yeah, that's how I feel. You want to do that. Teach what it is that you guys want to know. That's the best thing to do. So the last thing I want to talk about real quick is I want to give a shout out to everyone that listens to the podcast. I want to give a shout out to anyone who's ever looked at the YouTube station. I want to give a thank you to those who follow on social media, on the Instagram or the Twitter account, the E.I.T.H.R, But the other day, man, I was out and I ran into somebody, and my man's told me that he listens to the podcast. It was somebody I seen a few months ago, and his name is Kyle, and it's for his lady Alyssa out there in South Sacramento, and he said, "Thank you for the message that you're spreading." I know there's people, in Denmark. There's people in Canada, Japan, Germany, Spain. I've noticed there's people in India. I see that there's people, obviously, in the United States of America, who are listening to this podcast. Thank you. But it feels good every now and then when you meet someone in public and these people compliment you on what it is that you're trying to do. Because even though you don't need the quote unquote assurance of what you're doing is the right thing, it sure does feel damn good knowing that there's somebody out there who is listening to you and believes what you're doing makes sense. It's a very, very awesome feeling to have. And I want to give a shout out to them and to thank them for taking the time to listen to what it is that I have to say on my podcast. Also, one of the people who is constantly communicating in the chat is Alicia. Thank you very much for her listening to the podcast. She's, definitely been one of the quote unquote number one supporters of the podcast. Even when there's been episodes that I didn't feel like doing, her and her daughter listen. Shout out to Lil Bro to the episodes, and it's one of those things where when she gets off work and picks up her kid from school, this is one of those things that they look forward to hearing about what's going on. So she's, in addition, been in my ear about how important this is for some people. So when I happened to run into Kyle, it kind of just reassured what it is that she said. So I am nobody in particular, but I do want to thank the important people, which is all of you guys who are listening, for your time and your effort and continuously coming back to what I have to say, because obviously I must be saying something right. So I just want to say thank you very much for that. And I promise to be more consistent with what I got going on and more balanced with what I got going on, because the last thing I want to do is cheat anybody out of something that they have been looking forward into dealing with, which happens to be this. So that's pretty much all that is. I just want to say thank you very much. Again, episode number 48 is going to be in the books, ladies and gentlemen. So if you want to follow us on social media, the E.I.T.H.R, you can follow on Instagram. You can follow on Twitter. If you want to listen to any of the previous 47 episodes, you can go to the YouTube and just search the parent company, the GNS Inc., and subscribe there. You can also download the Spreaker app, S-P-R-E-A-K-E-R. Create yourself a profile. And when you create yourself a profile, you can chit chat with me live during. Also on Twitter, they have what's called Spaces. And Spaces kind of allows me to have an open forum of the podcast where we can engage. Because at the current moment, I don't have an updated laptop still. It's kind of expensive. You guys know how times are right now for everybody. That is my only way of having quote unquote interaction with callers, is people who create a Twitter account follow me on Twitter. And when I'm doing a spaces, you can engage with me that way, or chat with me through the speaker app or the YouTube page. So thank you very much, guys, for your time. I appreciate it. We'll be back Wednesday, 3:30. Today I ran a little late, had some stuff going on, but I figured it's better to give you something than to give you nothing. Enjoy the weather, depending on where you are. This should be the last couple of days of 90-degree weather, and we should be dropping in the 80s. So until then, y'all, stay cool.
This is Henry from New York, and I listen to the E.I.T.H.R podcast with my homie Decal.
What you know about the dopest dispensary in OKC with wheels? It's the only dispensary in OKC with wheels. Hot box delivery service. Discreet and dependable with all the biggest name brands and exotics, including Cookies, Backpack Boys, Dope Sup, Rap Packs, Baller Jars, Baller Bars, Cars, and more. Make sure you hit them up at 405-835-0222, 405-835-0222, 405-835-0222, hotboxdeliveryok.com.